Our next speaker is Alexis Donnelly. Alexis is a member of the Scientific Steering Committee of the International Progressive MS Alliance, where he's served since 2016. He's an assistant professor of computer science at Trinity College Dublin, and Alexis has lived with progressive MS for many years. Alexis is a tireless advocate for people affected by progressive MS and is one of Alexis's colleagues on the Progressive MS Alliance Scientific Steering Committee. I can share with you that when Alexis Donnelly speaks, the progressive MS research community listens. Please be sure to have your questions ready, as Alexis will be answering your questions following his presentation. Now, please join me in welcoming Alexis Donnelly to the stage.
Hello, can everyone hear me now? Okay, great. Well, welcome back and thanks for that generous introduction, John. I hope you all had a good lunch. I understand there are people from as far away as Chile and Colombia in South America joining us. So welcome to all of you. My talk is pivoting a little bit in a different direction, more the personal experience of someone with MS. And the title I'm working from is Just Do It. But the question that occurred to me immediately when I received the title was, well, do what? And so the talk is going to talk a little bit about my own life with progressive MS, and then dive into the what the Progressive MS Alliance looks like from the inside, and then we'll finish off with some poetry. Okay, so let's dive right in and have the next slide, please. Okay, I'm, as John said, a assistant professor of computer science at Trinity College Dublin. So I bring, I suppose, an academic research perspective to things. I've lived with progressive MS for nearly 30 years now, and I'm a member of the Scientific Steering Committee of the Alliance. Being a researcher certainly helps because you understand the way research is conducted and the reasons for some of the delays. So it's easier for me to understand some of the long time issues. But the thing that I didn't realize was that the computer science perspective is actually very helpful, because a computer scientist is always dealing with basically a sequence of instructions to manipulate a computing device. And if you think about it, DNA, the structure that controls the behavior of cells, is also a sequence of instructions, this time to make proteins largely, but also to control the way a cell responds to various stimuli. And that bit is a bit of a dark area at the moment. So it's incredibly interesting at a personal level to see the computing paradigm in a totally different context. Okay, so let's move on then to the next slide. My academic life, as one might expect, has been largely spent teaching, engaging in research, and certain administrative roles. Um, so it's been fun. We even got to the stage of spinning out a company. I was a very junior member of staff at that point, but my colleagues who did had a lot of success with it. So it was a very exciting stage of my life. And then I was hiking in the mountains with my brother, and usually I'm the one that's leading the charge. I'm walking a little faster and exploring. And suddenly my brother just shot ahead. I could not keep up with him. And the reason was my leg, I couldn't lift it. My left leg, I couldn't lift it up over the heather. We have a lovely mountainous area south of Dublin where we went hiking. So that was shattering when I received a diagnosis of MS. It took about a year to figure it out because we had at that time one MRI machine in the whole country, and there were 11 neurologists for a population of 4.5 million. So there was a long queue and a long delay. And in fact, what my GP did was he pulled a buddy of his out of retirement to give me the news. So uh, this neurologist was um, familiar with MS for many years, and he'd never seen the transformation that disease modifying drugs now make. And one of the things he explained that life would be very different. Um, there would be a high likelihood of progressive disability. But in all his years of practice, he said the thing that uh, seemed to help people most was what he called a positive mental attitude to the difficulties. And I clung on to that like a drowning man. I didn't know how things were going to work out. I was having difficulties getting around campus. Um, One thing that happened was I realized if a member of the staff in the university was facing these kind of difficulties, what must be like for students with disabilities. So, with some similarly minded uh, lecturers and professors from other universities in Dublin, we founded a small nonprofit organization called AHEAD to advocate for those students. So it was very much from a personal experience. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So you're getting a little bit of an idea of my life with MS. Um, I wonder, is it possible for you to just fill my complete screen with the slides? It's getting a little harder to read. Um, while you're working on that, anyway, I'll go ahead. Um, at some point, then, um, I had my first experience of rehabilitation. I went to a clinic in the Canary Islands. I'd been sort of referred there informally by an Italian uh, colleague. And boy, was it a liberating experience. A light bulb went off in my head, and I suddenly realized that life wasn't so bad after all, that there were many, many things that I could exert some degree of control over, and those things that I couldn't, I could find a way to find a solution. And the engineering background probably helped. We love figuring out how things work and improving them or figuring out solutions. So I learned that later the psychologists refer to this experience as a self efficacy learning how to deal with obstacles and um, overcoming them, circumventing them. Um, and I enjoyed that, certainly. I found myself continually explaining my experience with MS in order to improve access, for example, within the university or in other fora. That's what happened. So I had some experiences working on various national committees. Initially, um, very hard going, and um, people listened to one politely but did very little. So I learned from that experience that tenacity does pay off, but it might take a little while. So uh, don't give up, keep at it. And that brings me to the next photograph, or the next slide, which you should have photographed. This is a photograph of three individuals we might refer to as the MS Keteers, who are the three people with MS on the main scientific steering committee on the alliance. I'm sitting in my wheelchair there over on the left. You only see me in profile. Then on my left, there's John, whom you know already. And on my right is Caroline Sincock, uh, the third member of the three MS Keteers whom you haven't met or heard of yet. And I'd like to pay tribute to all of those. They've been fantastic colleagues to work with. And the three of us keep pushing the agenda in what we consider the right direction. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I think language sometimes can be very important. Um, we were referred to in the early correspondence, anyway, as the lay members of the committee. Um, and some of us kind of bristled at that choice of language. So this is the photograph where we met each other for the first time, and I think there was an unstated bond formed immediately, and we resolved thereafter to be the three MSketeers. So it's been fun, and the great thing, the really fantastic thing about the alliance is the other members of the committee. They are as dedicated as we are. They're very busy professional individuals who make time for that work with the alliance. So we we realized very early on that in fact we have uh, 20 or 30 MSketeers in reality. So okay, let's move on. Um, we're burning time. Let's have the next slide. Okay, this is just a little bit of an aside. They say you can get to know people by the books they read. Well, two books I bought recently. One is by an author called Bloom. It's called Against Empathy, the Case for Rational Compassion. And basically, it's a bit of a provocative title, but he's saying that in our compassion for other people, um, not to lose sight of the logical side of our brain. If we run away with the emotion, he refers to that as empathy. That can lead to problems. So don't leave the logical side of the brain outside. But that's the great thing about the Alliance. There's a lot of logic, there's a lot of science, but there's also a fair degree of compassion. Um, then the second one by Shanahan, the language of illness. Um, it talks about how patients, to use that word, and doctors um, speak about the same topics, but they use very different language. And once thought difference in language, difference in vocabulary is sorted out, the interaction between doctor and person with MS or any condition is so much better. So I haven't finished either of them yet, but they're on my agenda. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of Alexis Donnelly, the person. So we'll move on now to talk about the Alliance. We have the next slide. Um, it's an unprecedented coalition of large MS societies from the US, from Canada, Australia, UK, Italy, MSIF, which is the MS International Foundation, and many other MS societies. And their single focus is to develop a treatment for progressive MS. And that extends, by the way, not just to a drug related treatment, but to improve rehabilitation and well being. I can mention that later. So, what we've done, we've it's an amazing act of courage on the part of the different MS societies to put their money on the table, on the same table, push it together, and then call for research proposals on which that expanded money would be spent. And the research is highly targeted and relevant. It's coordinated globally, and it's meeting with some success. Um, the other thing that I think is important about the alliance is that it's become a forum for discussion between all the different stakeholders that you might think would be uh, relevant. Certainly, people with myself, like Caroline and John, but also pharmaceutical industry, academic researchers, clinical neurologists, and laboratory scientists who are diving deep into the microbiology and trying to figure out what's going on. We had excellent talks in all those areas this morning from Bar and Francisco, Daphne, and Xavier. So there's a lot going on and things are moving fast. Okay, next slide. So this is just a diagram of the way we've operated so far. We started out with a call for small projects, research proposals, about 50,000 euros 1 year long in certain targeted areas, and we funded about 20 of them. And we refer to those as the Challenge Awards. It's a kind of research reconnaissance, I suppose. It's a technique that's used in the Gates Foundation as well. Sort of, if you're going to get involved in a certain area, you know, research the area well beforehand, especially the darker, unknown areas. So anyway, then we launched the international collaborative networks. These were big awards. We funded 3 of them. They're worth about €1 million per year for 4 years. And there's 3 of them, so that's €12 million. That's a lot of money. 2 of them are in the drug search area, and the third one that I've colored in pink at the bottom, is trying to find a biomarker in MRI images, but particularly a biomarker that indicates the progress of or the development of what we call progression. And as we heard this morning, there's a difference, we think, between what we call progression and inflammation, which is more like the sort of explosive event that occurs inside the central nervous system. Progression is a much lower key, but continuous thing, and that's what we're targeting. So the Martino project is basically taking pharmaceutical databases, doing a big search for drugs that might be useful in hitting certain receptors, and then screening those in vitro first and maybe in mice and later to see if they'll work in humans. And then Francisco Quintana, whom you have heard from this morning, he's taking a different line. He's focusing on the reaction of the innate immune system, and you heard him there tackling what's going on. There's a lot of angry astrocytes and microglia in there that are causing a lot of trouble, and he's trying to figure out why. Okay, next. So, total digression. Let me just illustrate how long this research work has been going on. This is what's called a first day cover. When a new stamp is issued, the post office will get usually an envelope specially designed, and they might even have a fancy cancellation that has some link with the theme of the stamp. So this stamp is from Monaco, but yet if you look down on the bottom left of the screen, you'll see that it mentions the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, which is the US MS Society. So why would Monaco be issuing such a stamp? And if you look closely at the postmark, it's 1962. And there's in the diagram, in the picture on the left, there's a microscope meant to indicate research. So if you open the envelope, next slide, they're usually accompanied by a card insert that gives you a bit more detail. And this particular one has been autographed by Princess Grace of Monaco, who was a movie star before she married the Prince of Monaco. So you'll see it signed by Grace de Monaco. And if you look closely at the stamp itself, which I've enlarged, I'm sorry it's a bit blurred, but down at the bottom of the stamp, you'll see what's called a hope chest, in which you place all your hopes for the future. So the tagline we're using at the moment in the Alliance is that we've moved on from hope to real progress, as you heard in the presentations this morning. So this effort actually has been going on for many, many, many years. And I found that first sticker a complete accident during the COVID confinement. I was tidying up, I found that, and it was a real joy to see. So next. Okay, so perfect point to give a shout out to all the staff in the Alliance and the MS societies for the work they do. They really are a pleasure to work with. They get the job done quietly and efficiently, and they make allowances for the the vagaries of MS and make sure we participate to the fullest extent possible. Thanks also, of course, to researchers like the ones you've heard this morning, and not just the ones that are happen to be lucky and are funded by the resources of the Alliance, the meager resources of the Alliance, I would hasten to add, but researchers worldwide. You're contributing your jigsaw puzzle piece to the solution. So you're just as important. Don't forget that. Um, in the Alliance, one of the things we do is we kind of periodically publish academic papers, which kind of collect the expertise we've produced so far, not just the Alliance, but worldwide, and then set the path forward in the next steps in research. I mentioned that we're also interested in rehabilitation and well-being. That's a major focus of our activities. I'd hate to leave you with the impression that we're just doing the drug-related stuff. For those researchers among you, there's going to be some research grants announced soon, and there will be more calls coming. So do stay tuned. Um, Many of you are probably wondering, has COVID-19 affected our activities? Yeah, it has disrupted things a little bit. Um, they were halted for a moment in some of the network, collaborative networks, but we march on. We're a little delayed, but we won't give up. We will not give up. And our researchers are exemplary on that front. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I consider myself incredibly lucky to participate in the Alliance. Um, it's a real thrill from my own background as a researcher in computer science to see this work being done in natural sciences, but being able to contribute both from that perspective and the lived experience of progressive MS, and to be able to shout out when one thinks it's necessary, and to have such a receptive bunch of talented researchers to listen to us. Um, but the Alliance is going to need more people on the ground. The local MS societies can do with your help and feed into the activity that way. Things are changing, they're changing fast, and increasingly people with MS are determining the pace of that change and what gets researched. Um, there's an increasing expectation that people affected by a certain condition will be involved in the allocation of funding to that area of research and how that research gets conducted. So there are loads of opportunities opening up. So get in there, as the title says, just do it. They'll find some match between your talents and what jobs need to be done. So it's been fun so far for me. Been very lucky. So what one fool can do, I'm sure another can. Okay, so just get at it. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to finish with some poetry. I know there's a lot of Spaniards listening in, so we well, I picked this It's from Antonio Machado. It talks about pathways. Um, I'm just going to give you a very rough English translation. Wayfarer, your footprints are the path and nothing more. Wayfarer, there is no path. Path is made by walking. Walking makes the path. Next slide. And from French man of letters, André Gide, believe those who are searching for the truth. Doubt those who have found it. Doubt everything, but do not doubt yourself. So, call for self confidence and skepticism, two things that are very useful in science, but they're also incredibly useful with MS. So, being an Irishman, I couldn't but have an Irish poet last. So, if we move to the last slide, it's Seamus Heaney in a book he wrote called The Cure at Troy. It's been quoted in other contexts as well, but it's very appropriate to this. History says, don't hope on this side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, the longed for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. Okay, over to John now.
For you. Um, Wondering what advice you might have for a younger person, perhaps mid 30s, who's been diagnosed with progressive MS. What words would you share with them?
Okay, my audio is a little low, but I understand the question to be what advice would I have for a younger person in their 30s with MS? First, uh, the uh, outlook is changing. Um, I would try and keep myself in the best shape possible for what is to come. I would uh, dive into rehabilitation with a vengeance. I would keep uh, in shape, as active as possible. I would seek out the the company of other people with MS of like mind. They're looking for something, but there's incredible, I suppose, emotional resources to be found in common. Um, I know that the work that Francisco and others are doing about the gut bacteria, exercise can have an incredible influence on that. It must be the case because if you're taking exercise, then the bacteria in the gut are being, mixed around, and the outputs that get into the bloodstream will be different. I've very little doubt about that. Um, I'm sure there are other things, but the main thing I think I'd like to transmit is an emphasis on optimism. And even back in that day when I got my diagnosis, the neurologist said to me in an era when there were no disease modifying therapies that a positive mental attitude helps. And I know it's very hard to cultivate it, but it is possible. There's a lot more people talking about MS now, you can connect with those resources. I would hope, and things are improving through the work of EMSP. The EMS barometer it's an incredibly powerful political tool to influence your government to provide services, because we get new results every 2 years, and you can go to the government with well, I'm sorry, Poland has slipped 2 places, what are you doing? That's a dreadful outcome. We need more money. We need better services. So there's a lot of things that weren't there in the past. Um, I think the rehabilitation doesn't get enough press, and I think it does make a difference. There have been studies even where they're thinking of prescribing physical exercise as a medication. Uh, it, I think we'll be learning a lot more about that in the future.
I have
Does
another
that answer the
question.
question, John?
Oh, certainly does. What would be your recommendation to industry regarding the best way to collaborate with the Alliance?
Okay, for industry, I think um, an underappreciated thing that people with MS can do. Let's talk in the context of a trial. You want these big trials cost, the best part of €1 billion, and you don't want that money wasted. So you want to eliminate as much risk out of that project as possible and get a positive result. People with MS can uh, sort of give you advance warning of some of the pinch points that might arise. For example, if the testing that occurs every 2 months or 3 months is too onerous. And that can be so simple. It may not be under control of industry, but supposing the distance between the parking lot in the hospital and the neurology department is huge. You have to get from the car, struggle across the car park into the hospital, maybe into the elevator, get to the neurology department. And by the time you sit down at the waiting area in the neurology, you're wrecked. There's Even if the medication is working, the results that come out may be wrong, overly negative. So there are little things like that. There are ways of designing that sort of thing out of a trial. People with MS can contribute that perspective. They can also help you with recruitment, publicizing the trial, and then post-trial dissemination, the results afterwards. I think also a perspective that's important is what kind of medication to pursue. I think we've had a lot of improved versions of anti-inflammatory medications, but we need stuff that will attack this mysterious process of progression. And we've had hints already from Francisco's presentation. And there are other positive phase 2 trials of medications that might work. So we need those ramped up, and we need to get them into phase 3 as quickly as possible. And I'm sure there are loads of people with MS that will help industry in designing good trials.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to borrow from one of the poems you shared and talk about what perhaps is a great sea change, and that is the role and the voice of the patient in research, not only from a consulting or advisory point of view as we MSketeers get to participate, but actually in the drug development process, in the clinical trial process. Can you speak to how the role of the MS patient is evolving?
Certainly. Well, the three MSketeers have been incredibly lucky to um, be around the table when decisions are made. I think the the crucial thing, even the presence of someone with MS around a discussion table when these ideas are being discussed, it changes the tone and the direction of the discussion and the topics of what is relevant to our lives, what's likely to make an impact, uh, just looms larger in the discussion, and the thrust of the research moves a little bit. So there might be exciting scientific unknown questions, um, but the perspective of someone's daily life with MS is being heard, and it's being acted upon. There are lots of opportunities emerging there. I'm sure that there will be interactions where industry or academic researchers will be coming to MS societies and saying, look, what about this area? So there's an opening where the people with MS themselves or their representatives can dive in immediately. So I would say the conversation is opening up. I think people with MS contribute something invaluable to the discussion, and it can cause a little slow but a discernible pivot. And some of our insights, I can see them being acted upon.
You know, Alexis, the COVID 19 pandemic has brought with it a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And many experts have said that one of the reasons people living with MS have been able to emotionally manage fairly well during the pandemic is because people living with MS are already very well practiced in how to live in an uncertain environment. One of the things that I heard you say at the beginning, and you've circled back to it a couple of times, but especially given our current time, I think it's so important. You said, don't give up, keep at it. And I wonder if you can spend a couple of minutes talking a bit more about the value of resilience, not only in light of the pandemic, but the value of resilience in terms of living with progressive MS.
Okay. Let me begin by referencing that uh, uh, thing you talked about earlier. One of the things that I say in reference to the contribution that people with MS can make to the research process is we're like one of those, at least emotionally inside, uh, those wizened, gnarled scouts who knew the territory as the United States opened up to the West. the kind of characters played by James Stewart and Walter Brennan in the old Western movies. The Gnarldone scouts who know the territory for which a map has not yet been drawn. That's the way I see um, people with MS contributing. Uh, the the role, the importance of resilience. Yeah, I'd agree with the sentiment that uh, people with MS have handled the COVID-19 emergency rather well. Is precisely because of that, where the gnarled old scouts who know the territory and know how to handle ourselves. Um, but there's a little bit more that I'd like to add, and that is that um, we know from the research that it's likely that in the development of MS way back, maybe in our childhoods, there was a viral infection involved, and focus of research at the moment has been on the Epstein-Barr virus. And I think that COVID, because it's focusing research on the virus, the coronavirus, and developing vaccines, that inevitably some of the insights, either from the COVID-19 research or MS research, will throw light on each other. So I think at a scientific level, there will be shared insights. Um, how do people with MS, how does their immune system manage to handle all this, the episodes of explosive inflammation and uh, the sort of slow burn, uh, low level, continuous progression? What's going on there? There are some individuals who have what was called benign MS, where this activity uh, did occur and seems to have tailed off suddenly or even progressively, but it's tailed off. Why is that? I think there's an incredible amount that we can learn. Another crazy outlier that might be useful. We know that bats, in particular, tolerate a huge amount of viral infections, and they they have an incredible energy output for their body size, and their, relatively speaking, their lifetime is very long. Um, the coronavirus may have jumped from bat to human, but I think there may be lessons there in the bat immune system. So I agree, resilience, yes. Uh, we know the territory. Nobody's drawn a map yet, but we know the territory. And I think there's a lot more in common scientifically that will be found.
Since we do know the territory as well as we do, I'm wondering what would you characterize as the greatest challenge of living with progressive MS?
Whoa. Well, that's a tough question. I think there just I'm speaking personally, and this may not apply to everybody. So it comes in stages. I try to describe my own reactions to receiving a diagnosis, then the wonderful experience of rehabilitation, and then the pleasure of working with my fellow MSketeers in the alliance. So it depends on what stage you're at, I think. Um, Around diagnosis is, I think, because it's your first experience with the disease, I think having support around you at that point is very important. And that support um, might be provided by um, your comrades who have MS. It doesn't necessarily need to be provided by the health service. Now, if you're moving into counseling and psychological support, absolutely, the health service is first in line. But you can, you know, ask senior buddies in the MS Society about the way they handle things, and you'll see examples of good practice and bad practice, and you can say, yeah, well, he's got to go, she's got to. A great idea. I'll copy that, or I definitely won't do it that way. If you see something that may not be appropriate, and there's an incredible amount of tailoring has to be done because it's your life, you know, very different to someone else. Um, then as you move on, I think that concept I referred to of self-efficacy is very important. That can be developed in the context of rehabilitation. That's where I first experienced it. Um, it's like, you know, a senior colleague at work providing mentorship or advice to a junior colleague who might feel, you know, God, how am I going to handle this challenge? And it is absolutely devastating. I remember, you know, when I got that news, those words. Um, but if you told me then, if you pulled me aside and said, "Look, Alexis, in 30 years' time, you'll be talking to people with MS over an internet link, and you'll be sharing experience, and you will have had some very positive interactions with various either health services or colleagues that have built your resilience, and you'll see examples of how to handle it. um, I think health wise, um, I think keep yourself in good shape is most important. Like avoid the smoking, get lots of sunlight, or vitamin D tablets, the things that Mara was mentioning. Um, Exercise has an important impact on digestion and therefore the gut flora, and that may have a positive effect on cognition and things like that. So okay, well, I've I've gone on. There is a sort of feedback loop. There's an incredible uh, feeling, at least in my uh, experience, of the light bulb going off in my head. Oh, I can handle bits of this, man. Um, and the bits I can't handle, I'll find a way to inveigle the resources to do it. Now, I've been particularly lucky. I have to say, I have a partner in crime who's been incredibly supportive, and my son as well, providing care when the health system falls down, and that enable me to participate in the meetings that I showed a photograph of. So family and access to supportive resources are incredible pillars on which you can build that resilience. But I wouldn't, I'd say it'll be harder without them if that's your situation. But there are resources there that you can tap into, I'm sure. I hope that kind of roundabout way answers the question, John.
Of course. And I thank you. On a personal note, I also thank you for digging up a photograph where I actually have some hair on my head. So thank you for that as well, my fellow MS-keteer. Alexis Donnelly, thank you for sharing so much of your story and really demonstrating what resilience looks like, sounds like, and feels like.
Oh, you're very kind. Hang in there, guys.